We have a bit more information today about the whole mask situation when it comes to WWE and their COVID-19 testing policy and procedures, and I have quite a few thoughts on it, so I thought I'd share it here. I think it's really interesting that firstly, that it's taken this long for WWE, like I mentioned previously, when it had this mask policy, which I have made a video on, to go check it out on the channel. I was shocked how long it took for WWE to actually implement this mask policy in general, but we're getting more and more details as to why this mask policy was implemented, and it's not necessarily for the reasons in which you would, or certainly I would expect that WWE would implement it, not going on the base of science and medical experts and doctors. No, it took for a talent to go up to Vince McMahon himself and plead for them to implement this policy. So, Kevin Owens, we've heard a lot about Kevin Owens recently, whether it has been staying at home or on social media or even at the tapings, about wearing a mask, concerns about WWE's COVID-19 testing and safety procedures. He was the one who reportedly confronted Vince McMahon over the lack of masks at WWE tapings during this coronavirus pandemic. Now, WWE French language commentator Pat Laprade noted during a recent episode of the Les Antipois de Lutte. I mean, I did French during secondary school, but I'm still not great at it. But during his podcast, we'll put it there, and revealed that Owens was the one who raised concerns with the WWE chairman and CEO at the TV tapings held on Friday, July 3rd at the WWE Performance Center. This reportedly led to the mandatory mask policy and fines for those not wearing masks while in the building. Kevin Owens reportedly told Vince McMahon that he was not comfortable with the lack of masks being worn by people in the Performance Center and people being too close to each other. Owens also told McMahon that he was going home, apparently due to COVID-19 concerns. Vince McMahon then asked Kevin Owens what he wanted him to do, and Kevin Owens allegedly responded by saying Vince McMahon is the only person that the WWE crew will listen to. Well, of course, Vince McMahon is the only one that the WWE crew will listen to. He is the chairman and CEO of the company. That's how the business works. So I don't really understand that line in there. Vince McMahon is the only one that everyone will listen to. Well, he's the boss. That's kind of how the corporate structure works there. It was also said that Vince McMahon asked Kevin Owens if instituting a mask policy with fans would work. Kevin Owens said that he once swore on SmackDown, was fined and never did it again, with the idea that the fine was a deterrent. Vince McMahon apparently listened and took action as Kevin Owens stayed on to work the tapings after noticing that people were starting to wear masks and practice better social distancing. Now, we saw Monday Night Raw last night. That was actually taped last Friday. And we saw Kevin Owens take on Seth Rollins in singles action on the show. And as previously mentioned in our video that we already made on the channel here about the mask policy, WWE is now issuing $500 fines for not wearing masks unless a person is performing in front of the camera. The second offence reportedly brings a fine of $1,000. Now, it was also reported back in June that Kevin Owens skipped a set of TV tapings after a developmental talent tested positive for COVID-19. Kevin Owens' wife's grandfather had passed away from the virus a few weeks before. Owens would then later post a heartfelt message about COVID-19 and wearing a mask, which we'll post a link to in the description box below. WWE officials told their employees a few months ago that they did not have to work the pandemic if they didn't feel comfortable doing so, and that decision would not be held against them in the future. Kevin Owens would actually explain his decision to take some time away from the WWE due to this positive COVID-19 test. He appeared on the bump in late June and said, quote, "Due to the circumstances that happened last week with the positive coronavirus test, I just thought it would be wiser for me to stay with my family. I told the people in charge of my decision, and they were like, yeah, okay. I think they know that once I make my mind up on something, that's the way it's going to be. They were respectful of my decision. I'm glad I did it because I think this was the best decision for me and for my family," end quote. There is so much for me to break down here, and I must preface it by saying, first of all, as I mentioned in the mask policy video that I did, as I've mentioned several times on social media, when I've talked about this, I'm very, very, very happy that WWE have finally taken some form of action and implemented this mask policy. It's been medically proven at this point, scientifically proven by experts around the world. Wearing a mask prevents the spread of COVID-19, prevents the spread of coronavirus. Wear a mask if you're out in public. Many countries now, many states, I know over here in the UK, at the end of July, we're implementing a law now that you will be fined if you go into a shop without wearing a mask, because wearing a mask prevents the spread, or at least limits the spread of the coronavirus. So it's science, it makes sense. I'm glad that WWE has finally taken some form of action and implemented it into their performance center. However, the hypocrisy here, in my point of view, from WWE is it's laughable. Yeah, it actually is laughable. Can you imagine, honestly, can you imagine that it took an employee, a talent, a WWE superstar to go to the chairman and CEO of a publicly traded billion-dollar company to say that he did not feel safe in the workplace for a billion-dollar publicly traded company to institute some form of change to protect their employees' health and well-being? 4 months, I would add, into a pandemic. 4 months into when they've been doing shows at that WWE Performance Center. It took for Kevin Owens to go up to Vince McMahon and say, you know what, I don't feel safe, I'm going home. And then Vince McMahon to go, oh no, what would it take to keep you here? It shouldn't be like that. It just shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be for Kevin Owens to have to go up to Vince McMahon and say, you've got to do something because I don't feel safe going to work. Everyone should feel safe going to work. Everyone should feel safe going into work and not have to worry about themselves getting sick, their family getting sick, their friends getting sick, their loved ones getting sick. To me, that's the bare minimum. Right? That shouldn't even be part of the discussion. That should just be sorted. And Kevin Owens, what a great guy, because he has possibly helped so many people here and stopped and maybe prevented so many people from getting sick here. So kudos to him. Tremendous job by Kevin Owens. But it shouldn't be for Kevin Owens to go up to Vince McMahon. And this isn't a slight against Kevin Owens, but who's Kevin Owens to tell Vince McMahon that? That should just be something that comes from the top down anyway. Once we were in a pandemic 4 months ago, this should have been, okay, we'll do a mask policy, we'll update our health and safety procedures, we'll make this a safe place to work. If we're going to continue putting on shows, we will make this a safe place to work. And the more you hear about WWE's just lack of health and safety policy over the last 4 months, or just during this pandemic, it blows the mind. And I think it's become so bad now that people have almost got used to it. And Kevin Owens wasn't the first one to say, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm going home. We had Roman Reigns. And again, he's gone on record to say, whilst he has obviously a compromised immune system because of his previous leukemia diagnosis, that wasn't the reason that he decided to stay at home. He decided to stay at home for the sake of his newborn children, his wife and his family. And he raised a really, really, really good point when he spoke about it. He said, it's not a case of I don't trust the WWE, and we'll have to wait and see into that one. But like he said, they've got such a diverse workforce here. People don't all live in Florida. They fly in from all over the country. Can you realistically say that they're being as safe and cautious as he is? No. And even if they are, they're coming in from airports. Are the airports being as safe and cautious as he is? He doesn't know that. He can't be sure. And when it comes to the health and safety of his family and his loved ones, it doesn't even compare to his colleagues at work, unfortunately. That's how it works. And again, it shouldn't have been for WWE to take this proactive step. It shouldn't be for Kevin Owens to go to Vince McMahon and say, come on, do something. WWE, like I said, they're a billion-dollar publicly traded company. Why on earth wouldn't they go to, I don't know, external doctors, or listen to all of the health and scientific guidelines provided by the government or people in the know, and say, this is what we're going to do? Why should it take for Kevin Owens, a WWE superstar, to implement real change? Am I the only one that blows my mind? Because it's ridiculous, really, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy. Kevin Owens, he's the one behind medical change in WWE. That's mad. And the only reason that WWE actually implemented this mask policy at all is because they didn't want Kevin Owens to go home because they would lose another superstar. How about you don't lose any by keeping your shop in order? And they're the ones getting angry with AEW doing the sloppy shop comments. Well, don't run a sloppy shop then. That's what I never understood about that report, right? Do you remember that report? A couple of weeks ago, Taz came out, I believe, was it night one of Fyter Fest, and he comes out and he says, we didn't run a sloppy shop, and he was talking about Jon Moxley and the fact that he had to stay away from AEW for a couple of weeks. He had to quarantine, self-isolate, because obviously his wife, Renee Young, had tested positive for COVID-19. And Taz in his promo says, we didn't run a sloppy shop. WWE get hot about it because they go, why are they saying we don't run a sloppy shop? Well, because you do. And regardless of what people say, well, blah, blah, blah. Every time I talk about this on social media, this is what blows my mind about all of this, is that some people are just willing to overlook it. Well, they don't have to be there. Well, I bet certain people do. Not everyone is Kevin Owens. Not everyone is Roman Reigns or Sami Zayn. Other people need to pay their bills. They need to provide for their family. And they need to go to work. And I bet they have worries and I bet they have concerns. But they don't have a choice. They can't go. Do you think people on the ring crew can go to Vince McMahon and say, I would prefer everyone to wear a mask? He'd kick him in the ass and throw him out of the building. It's not as simple as stuff like that. It's not as simple as stuff like that. This is the same company as well that, as I mentioned, 4 months they've been doing this WWE Performance Center shows, whether it was initially in the empty WWE Performance Center. And I say empty. I have some massive suspicions about that anyway. Because if you look back, they've still been filming all of these chronicles and WWE 365s and WWE 24 documentaries. So how many people were really in that closed set there? Because I don't think it was just essential personnel. Do you remember that? When we first had those empty arena SmackDowns and Raws and NXTs and obviously WrestleMania and Money in the Bank, we're going to only have essential personnel on a closed set. Right, okay. And it's interesting now because, like I said, as these documentaries are starting to be released on the WWE Network, I know they were doing one about Drew McIntyre around the time of WrestleMania. Obviously, they did the WWE Chronicle with Jeff Hardy around the time of Backlash. I think they've got to be really careful because they're going to be exposing some stuff that maybe they don't want people knowing that they were doing during that period of time. Because they could potentially get caught out. Because I am convinced there is no way that it was a completely closed set. What does that even mean? Or we're going to have essential personnel on hand. Okay, sure. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. I'm just, as I mentioned again, I am flabbergasted that it took for Kevin Owens to go up to Vince McMahon and say, by the way, I'm going home unless you sort this out because it's ridiculous. And again, this is the same company that 4 months in to these empty arenas, well, not the empty arena shows, but 4 months in to the WWE Performance Center shows, during this pandemic, 4 months into it, WWE finally started testing talent. The only reason they started testing talent was after one tested positive externally for COVID-19. This wasn't a WWE test. This was, an external test. And they went, we need to test everyone now because they weren't doing it. And again, they were lying. They were lying about that because every time you saw them appear on WWE TV, right, when they started having the Performance Center recruits back in the crowd or whatever, you had Tom Phillips on commentary or Michael Cole. They've all been tested. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. They weren't testing people. They were giving them temperature checks, and sometimes if they were even above the threshold for the temperature checks, they were told, come in anyway. They came to the door of the WWE Performance Center. How you feeling, pal? I feel fine. Get in. Right? Fill out a medical questionnaire. Are you feeling well today? Tick yes or no. Tick. Come in. That thorough COVID-19 test done there. And again, I've said this so many times now, and it's I guess I'm even boring myself, but it needs to be said. It needs to be said because they need to be held accountable for this. Their reaction to the whole pandemic has been slower than slow and so lax. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. They're so quick when it comes to putting on shows, right? This is WWE. The show must go on. It's entertainment, pal. We put smiles on faces. They're so quick to have an empty arena SmackDown at the Performance Center. How quick around was that? Quick was that turnaround? They're quick to have a Raw at the Performance Center. How quick was that turnaround? They're quick to have WrestleMania at the WWE Performance Center and get that all taped in. Remember when everything was shut down? So they had to tape everything in the space of like 3 days, and they taped WrestleMania at the Performance Center, and they got even the cinematic matches done. They were quick to get that done, but when it comes to something actually quite minor, like implementing policy that you have to wear a mask and you have to stay socially distant from each other, oh no, that takes a bit of time. That takes a bit of convincing from Kevin Owens to Vince McMahon. And that's just one of the horror stories that we've heard over the last few months. Another report, Vince McMahon, he thinks that the coronavirus is an inconvenience or a nuisance. And the reason why, realistically, and again, whether you believe that story or not, you can kind of hear Vince McMahon's attitude to it, can't you? Whether you believe it or not, ultimately he believes it's an inconvenience because it costs him and the company money. It doesn't matter about the health and safety of his employees or their well-being if they can get sick or not. It's about money. Can we get WrestleMania on? Oh, we don't have WrestleMania in a stadium this year. Boo-hoo. Keep your employees safe. Keep your employees' families and loved ones safe. That should be the paramount. That should be the ultimate, regardless if you're in a pandemic or not, right? I mean, am I the only one that thinks that? And then you have stories coming out of Kevin Owens getting over the house mic during the TV tapings at the WWE Performance Center, telling people not to wear masks. No, don't wear masks. They take away, you can't make enough noise in masks. Or they don't look aesthetically pleasing on camera. I mean, come on. That's what made me laugh about the initial story about WWE implementing this mask policy. It was so close to each other. That's why you knew that something had happened. And obviously now that we know what happened, it was Kevin Owens happened. But a couple of weeks prior, maybe even less than that, it might have been a mere days prior to that, you hear the stories about Kevin Dunn saying, oh, don't wear masks, you can't wear masks on camera, the people in the crowd can't wear masks, etc. And then like 2 days later, WWE has implemented a mask policy. So everyone at the time was going, what happened? Like something must have happened here. What happened? Kevin Owens happened. Thank Lord, right? It's just, and during this time as well, and this I think sums up the hypocrisy of WWE's just slow reaction when it comes to the whole pandemic that we're in at the moment, is during a time in which they were telling people in the crowd not to wear masks, and during a time in which COVID-19 was an inconvenience to Vince McMahon and the WWE, and during a time in which they're considering trying to get fans back in the arena. Oh, we're ready to have fans back in the arena. No, you are not, WWE, okay? How many times have we heard that story over the last few weeks? WWE is ramping up their plans to have fans back in the arena. Are you serious? Because they've only instituted a mask policy like in the last week. I don't think they're in any position to have thousands of people in an arena, regardless how many people it is at all. I don't think the plexiglass around ringside does anything about that. Just, you know, what's the point in having the plexiglass around the ring if you didn't have everyone in the crowd wearing masks or socially distancing? So, no, they are not ready. And you notice there, Kevin Owens, when he's saying, this is why the story made me laugh, because Kevin Owens is saying to him, you need to sort out your mask policy. You need to have better social distancing. And Vince McMahon then starts going, would a mask policy with fans work? Why is he asking Kevin Owens? Why is Kevin Owens suddenly the fountain of knowledge when it comes to COVID? He would openly say he is not. Go to the health experts. Go to the scientists. Go to the doctors. Like, Kevin Owens apparently is, COVID-19 specialist now. Vince McMahon going, would a mask policy with fans work as well? I mean, and then it's just, I really commend Kevin Owens for standing up and doing the right thing here, but he shouldn't have to. I think that's the thing that angers me the most when it comes to this is WWE. We know their wealth. They're publicly traded. Again, wouldn't it be a shareholder concern, not Kevin Owens, to say, what are we doing to protect our talent? Wouldn't it be a shareholder concern to say, why did it take so long to implement a mask policy? Why did it take so long to have social distancing? Why did it take 4 months for you to start actually doing proper COVID testing? Why were you just not telling the truth when it came to the original COVID testing? If I was a shareholder, that would be a massive concern for me. I'm invested in the company. If people find out that we're not doing all that we can do to protect our talent, the stock market's going to sink. Right? It's already taken a dive anyway. Our stock price will go down. So it's madness. It's absolute madness. It's craziness. And the more you hear these stories, you don't blame a Roman Reigns or a Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens initially for stay at home, because why? I know I wouldn't want to be there. And yet they still have 71-year-old Ric Flair show up. And every time I see Ric Flair on my screen during Monday Night Raw at the moment, regardless of how good the segments are, last night he had a backstage segment with the Big Show, and I tell you what, the segment itself, the promo by Flair, the promo by Big Show, was great. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really, really good segment. But the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, Ric Flair, why are you there? Go home. Go home. And again, it kind of baffles me that I'll mention this on social media. I'll say, Ric Flair, great segment, but he shouldn't be there. He needs to go home. And you'll get people that say, wow, it's his own choice. He can be there if he wants to. Oh, he's getting tested. And I'm stunned. I'm stunned when I see that response, because it shouldn't, and I know this is going to sound quite callous, but it shouldn't be his choice. Right? It shouldn't be his choice. If you're WWE, you have to think about protecting your company and your talent and your employees. If you're looking at Ric Flair, if I'm the chairman of WWE, and again, this will sound very cold, but you look at it from just a PR point of view. If Ric Flair, heaven forbid, and touch wood, this will never happen, but if Ric Flair gets really sick, gets diagnosed with COVID-19, and heaven forbid something really, really bad happens, obviously, it's terrible for Flair and his family, but it's also terrible for the WWE. How bad does that look for WWE? Because people will then rightfully ask the question, why did you have someone that was high risk in a place where we've seen nearly 40 positive COVID-19 tests in the last 3 weeks alone? Why? And if their excuse is, well, it's his own choice, it's his own decision, that just doesn't cut the mustard. Because the PR damage will be done. People will say, what on earth was WWE doing? So again, it shouldn't be for Ric Flair to go, well, I want to be here. WWE should go, look, you're high risk. It's obviously we're protecting you, but we're also protecting the company here. And that's what it comes down to. So again, I'm stunned that WWE doesn't do that. And you have Ric Flair coming out, I think it was last week in an interview, going, all this, rumours about bad testing and etc. The testing policies are great. People are wearing their masks now. They're socially distancing. What do people expect for Ric Flair to say? What's he going to do? Is he going to come out and say, no, it's terrible, I don't want to be back there, I'm terrified? No, he's not going to say that, is he? Of course he isn't. It's Ric Flair. Has had like 10 ex-wives or something ridiculous. Needs the money. Needs a payday, right? He ain't going to say that. Ric Flair loves the business. He loves being on Raw. He lives for being in WWE and on television. That is his drug. 71 years of age. He doesn't drink as much anymore, but he's still addicted to pro wrestling. We all are. Nothing's going to tell him to stay away, not even COVID-19. But it shouldn't be his choice. It should be for WWE to be proactive here and prevent anything bad from happening to Ric Flair and anything bad from happening to the WWE. And I had a response last night on Twitter too when I said this. And someone said, well, wouldn't you say the same for AEW about having the likes of Jim Ross, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Jake Roberts, etc. at the show? And my answer to that is yes and no. Yes, you are right there probably. If anyone is considered high risk, I don't think they should be, shouldn't be in the state of Florida at the moment because that's a mess. It's like the worst place in the world at the moment for it. But they shouldn't be taken to the show. I do agree with that. However, I would argue that Daily's Place hasn't seen nearly 40 positive COVID-19 tests in the last 3 weeks alone. AEW has been pretty good with their mask policy and social distancing policy. People will say, well, what about the people in the crowd? Well, they were all fully tested even from the start. Does it make it right? Probably not, because we've seen false negative tests. And again, I do criticise AEW for that. But I don't think AEW's policy and procedures have been as bad as WWE's. AEW still has ways to improve. And like I said, if I had it my way, anyone high risk just wouldn't be there at all, because I would love to err on the side of caution and I would love to see nobody get sick, regardless of how severe it is or not. But we are where we are with that at the moment. But WWE, it's another level. People like Ric Flair shouldn't be there. You would like to hope that people in Ric Flair's family would be saying to him, Dad, there have been like 40 COVID-19 tests in this confined space. I don't think you should be here. It's not safe. But regardless. And WWE's implemented this mask policy, but they've been selling masks on WWEshop.com for like a month. Why? They've been making them, but telling people not to wear them. I mean, talk about what that is business, isn't it? That is the cold, hard business right there. We tell people they can't wear masks on TV for the longest time, but we've been selling them for the longest time because you got to chase that almighty dollar. It's all about smiles on faces and smiles on the wallets in WWE. That's what it is. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion, just one man's rant today, isn't it? It was a nice rant. It feels quite cathartic sometimes to get that off your chest, isn't it? But what are your thoughts on the WWE mask policy? Kevin Owens being the one to force real change when it comes to WWE implementing a mask policy. Should it be for Kevin Owens to have to go to Vince McMahon, the chairman and CEO of a publicly traded billion-dollar company, to enforce real change? Or should WWE be doing it? Should they improve their procedures? Should they have improved their procedures a long, long time ago? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.